Let's be real. When you hear the word intelligent, what pops into your head? Probably someone with a high IQ, or maybe someone who just seems to know a ton of facts about everything. But what if I told you the real signs of a sharp mind are way less obvious? What if they're actually hidden in these little everyday habits you and I barely even notice? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into.
Psychology has a really fascinating take on this. We usually link a lack of intelligence to really obvious stuff, like thinking slow or getting bad grades. But the reality? It's much more subtle. It actually hides behind our normal day-to-day behaviors, the mental ruts we fall into without even realizing it. So it's less about what we know and way more about how our minds operate.
And that right there, that's the heart of it. Look, this isn't about judging anyone's intelligence. Not at all. Think of this more like a guide, a way to spot your own mental habits. Because once you can actually see them, you can start making sharper, better decisions. So, here's the game plan. We're going to break down 5 of the most common thinking traps out there. But I don't want you to see these as flaws. Nope. See them as chances to get better. We'll start by rethinking what intelligence even is. Then dive into the effort avoidance trap, the problem with borrowed thoughts, what happens when we react instead of think, and finally, why your first answer is almost never enough. Let's kick things off with the first one, the effort avoidance trap. This is that feeling, you know the one, that you get the second something gets mentally tough. It's that instant urge to just check out.
Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it cognitive tolerance. The best way to think about it is like mental stamina. And here's the kicker. Sharper minds simply have a higher tolerance for that mental strain. They can sit in that uncomfortable feeling of not knowing, while a mind that's used to taking shortcuts will immediately start looking for the exit.
So, what does that escape route actually look like in our daily lives? What really happens when our cognitive tolerance is basically running on fumes? Well, it looks a whole lot like this. You hit a difficult part of an article, and suddenly, your phone is in your hand. You're trying to solve a tough problem at work, and next thing you know, you're just mindlessly switching over to check your email. It's not that the task is impossible, it's just that it's uncomfortable, and grabbing a distraction is so easy. All right, let's move on to trap number 2 because it builds right on top of this. This one is all about where our ideas actually come from. It's what we can call the trap of low cognitive independence. Or to put it simply, it's when we use borrowed thoughts instead of our own. I mean, just think about it for a second. It takes real, hard mental work to look at an idea, question it, and then build your own viewpoint. It is so much easier to just adopt and repeat what you heard on social media or from a friend or from some talking head. But when we do that, we're not really thinking for ourselves at all. So how do you fight this? How do you break the habit? Well, it's a simple process, but that doesn't mean it's easy. First, you have to question the source. Where is this coming from? Second, you analyze the logic. Does this argument actually make sense where you poke at it? And only then, only after you've done that work, should you form your own independent conclusion. That right there, that's the bedrock of real thinking. All right, on to our next trap, reaction without understanding. This one is huge in our modern world. It's all about the hidden cost of speed. We're so hooked on constant stimulation that we end up just reacting emotionally before we've even had a chance to understand what's really going on. Just think about how our brains work. If your brain gets hooked on that next quick hit, the next scroll, the next video, the next notification, it starts to lose its ability to be patient. And deep thought is literally impossible without patience. Silence starts to feel weird, and stillness feels unbearable, because our brains are being rewired for constant input, not for quiet reflection. So you can see our brains can take 2 totally different roads when we get new information. There's the reactive path, which is like a super fast highway. You get a stimulus, you have an emotional reaction, and boom, you jump straight to a conclusion. But the thoughtful path has this one crucial extra step, a pause. That pause is everything. It's where you analyze, where you try to understand before you respond. The goal is to just consciously choose that second path a little more often. And that reactive path leads us perfectly into our final trap for today, the first answer fallacy. This is the habit of finding one quick, simple answer and then just stopping. The whole thinking process just shuts down right then and there. So here's the crucial point, and it's a big one. A sharp mind doesn't just look for an answer. It gets that thinking is a process, a journey that isn't supposed to end at the very first stop you come to. That's right, it explores. It keeps asking questions. It digs down to the second layer, and then the third. It stays curious and asks, okay, but what else could be going on here? A thinking process that always ends too quickly never gets a chance to develop any real depth. So let's pull it all together. You can probably see how these cognitive traps are all connected, right? We start by avoiding mental effort, which makes us more likely to just repeat other people's thoughts instead of forming our own. That need for constant stimulation then pushes us to react before we understand. And all of that comes together in the habit of stopping at the first shallow answer we find. And that really is the big idea I want you to walk away with. Intelligence isn't some fixed thing that you either have or you don't. It's a dynamic process. It's not about the answers you can collect, but about the quality of the questions you're willing to ask and just how far you're willing to push your own mind. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. In your day-to-day life, when you're faced with new information or a challenge, do you truly think it through? Or do you just react? The answer to that question might be the first step to building a much sharper mind.